I'm Garrett Kennedy, mental health consultant. I want to talk to you today about overcoming fear. Fear can cause problems in many situations, from reuse or falling off the wagon, as they say, or avoiding of behaviors and duties that are expected for whatever reason. Fear and being asked to overcome fear goes against the very core of our nature. I mean, it's a very human trait to ask somebody to overcome their fear. These are instinctual behaviors that oftentimes, if left unchecked, can escalate to what we call red zone or out of control emotional outbursts resulting from the fight or flight response. Now, when the fight or flight response is invoked, you're going to repeat the actions you did underneath a similar context of situations as far as your mind considers. So if you are scared, then you really are scared. It's that simple. And you could be triggered into a fight or flight response, which, of course, as we know, is a bad situation. You're not using your executive functions, and you're only using the behaviors that have gotten you out of this situation and back to safety again, or back to feeling a sense of calm, which is something we should all be spreading around and helping people through, especially if they're panicking or experiencing situations of fear that can be avoided. Now, when you're looking at fear as an emotional language, this can sometimes be hard for people to understand. I mean, dealing with small children or dealing with people with mental disabilities, as I have in the past, oftentimes the concept of changing your behaviors is not always accepted by both parties, is not always fully understood, and the techniques and tools, although helpful if the people you're supporting do understand them, isn't essential. What is essential is that you learn that person's language. Let me give you an example. Imagine, if you will, that you're on a roller coaster. You're in the lineup, you follow through, talking to your friend about front of first car or last car, which one's better and the reasons why. You go through a decision-making process. You go onto the roller coaster and you really have no control over the ups and downs and getting ins and outs and the thrills and the dips and the hollows and the highs and the lows of this roller coaster ride. Then you get off the roller coaster ride, and at the end of it all, there's an outcome. There's a silly little photo, or there's a desire to go on it again or never again, or whatever the case may be. Now, when you look at this simple situation of a roller coaster ride, you can see how this enters into a cycle, because oftentimes people enter into that trigger of what causes them to go on this roller coaster ride of emotions once again. There is a gambit of different emotions that go through the process of a roller coaster ride that would make a great analogy. However, what I want to focus on is, were your hands up or were your hands down? Now, whatever made you feel comfortable having your hands up or comfortable holding onto the rail, whatever your choice, I want you to imagine, what would you need to do to force yourself to go through a thrilling roller coaster ride with your hands in the opposite position that you would normally have them in? Consider that for a moment. Because oftentimes, even though you're feeling safe, there's no problem. If you try to put your hands in the opposite of what feels comfortable, you have to go through some emotional checks and some emotional skills, even to consider this as a possibility for the entire ride. Now, if you're looking at supporting somebody who's going through a repeated cycle of behavior, avoidance or lashing out or yelling or reuse, whatever it is you're trying to support, fear of guilt, fear of rejection oftentimes plays a very crucial role in the lead up to this roller coaster ride. Because as beneficial as it would be for me to spend some time going through this actual loop and looking at the rigid nature of how that is like a link in a chain, it's very rigid, it's very solid, and it doesn't flex very much. When you're given that stimulus, then that's the cycle you're going to go through every single time. That's what the fight or flight model says. But what we're looking at mental resiliency training, and it doesn't matter if you're using zones of regulation or writing without tears, or St. John's First Aid even has many different helpful tips on behavioral change and emotional control and regulation. What we're looking at in that mental resiliency training is we're looking at that moment not during that cycle, but we look at the moment either right before you get in line or right after you come out of the exit. You have a choice at that moment. At that moment in time, your emotions are different than when you're going around the cycle. This is the moment where we want to capture. This is the moment when I feel is most reasonable to expect a positive outcome or expect some response, for God's sakes, from the people that we're trying to support. They're in a calm, placid place. They're in that green zone state, ready to learn, maybe willing to reflect, maybe not. But at this point in the cycle, after they're finished and calmed back down and things have gotten back to normal, or right before they decide to go on the roller coaster. These are the two crucial times for the support person to look at. And most importantly, the most important times to teach that individual to be mindful of. Because the ultimate goal is that the person you're supporting recognizes they're choosing to go on that roller coaster and then logically makes the choice to go through it or not. At that point, it's their decision. But we want to make them realize they have that moment, that link, that place where you can break from a rigid loop and look for a more flexible solution. This is where we want to rope them in. This is where we want to throw out a lifeline to these people and connect them to the rest of the network of all of the different ropes of communication and strings that you have spread out to support this person and their support network. At this moment where they're deciding whether or not to go over the roller coaster loop again is when, let's say, somebody's looking at a daunting task, something they don't want to complete. This brings up feelings of insecurity, which can lead to this foretold fear. So what we want to do, instead of actually dealing with the fear once it takes hold and they enter into that line for the roller coaster, there's no going back. If you can catch somebody early enough in this situation or reflect with them right after, you can explore with them different options. You can ask them about their roller coaster ride while they're not in it. So you can have them think, well, if you wanted your picture to have your tongue sticking out and your eyes crossed next time we go through the roller coaster, where in that roller coaster is that choice? Where in your day, where in this daunting task, right? Maybe if it's just homework, where in your pattern can you find that moment where you need to control your behaviors so that the outcome is different, so that that picture at the end is different? And maybe you're a little bit happier with how you went through the cycle that time. Maybe that's the conversation you're having. Maybe you're looking at leaving the amusement park altogether, and you're actually just looking at some reasonable help with if somebody's doing a daunting task, maybe some homework, and they're coming up with these feelings, or you're noticing hesitations. That's where your expertise with your client come into play. You're going to recognize when they're hesitating or when they're hedging or when you've just got that inkling that they know how to do it and they're avoiding it for some reason. Right then and there is a great opportunity to avoid the problem in the first place. Find a different solution that doesn't involve that cycle would be best. I hope that this has been an interesting conversation for you. I hope that this is some useful information on supporting those of us who may not have some support right now. Check me out on Facebook at Kennedy Consulting. I've got a phone number and an email that you can text or call or email out. Of course, during this crisis call, I'm giving a little bit of advice and support for the goodness of my fellow man and whatnot. So reach out. You've got a great support network. Try to throw out some lifelines and rope some other people into controlling their mental health issues. We're looking to create a resilient, observant, positive environment tackling and overcoming fear is definitely going to be a place in this whole situation we're in. And I strongly suggest you focus on that period of time where people you're supporting aren't in that panic cycle. See if you can guide them to a place where they're calm again, and then discuss the emotions and the reasons that led them to the decision that going around that loop was the right decision, and try to avoid those situations or find alternate solutions to those same problems in the future. And you might have a better day, a happier day, and a calmer day. Remember to help spread the calm. How we can fight all of these viruses is by spreading helpful information on staying connected and aware with each other. Keep it positive. Help your fellow man. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for listening.